Hey everybody, this is Ron, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Warlord of Mars. This is the third book in Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom series. If you'd like to check out my first two reviews of these books, I have a John Carter playlist linked in the description. This book is unique because it's the first book in the series where John Carter doesn't start out back on Earth. He's been on Mars, or Barsoom, for a longer period of time, which I thought was a good move because Edgar Rice Burroughs dove right into the action this time. The previous book, Gods of Mars, had a huge cliffhanger ending, and Burroughs quickly sets up what has been going on in the past 6 months leading up to this story. John Carter has to go on a mission to rescue his wife, Dejah Thoris, from the Temple of the Sun, which is the place she got stuck in at the end of Gods of Mars along with Fedor and Thuvia. Fedor was about to strike Dejah Thoris when the doors of the temple closed, leaving John Carter helpless. Now John has to wait a full Barsoomian year before the temple opens back up, but he tries to find another way in along with his pet Woola. I enjoyed the simplicity of this opening because it's basically John Carter on a solo mission to get Dejah Thoris back, and that's really the whole plot of this book, which was nice because I felt like everyone had to be rescued in the last book and it became a little repetitive. So it was a good move to narrow that down to one person this time. That's not to say that there aren't any repetitive elements in this book because I feel like everywhere John Carter ends up, he puts on a different disguise, and while I understand why he had to do that, I did feel like I was reading the same scenario over and over, just in a different location. Thurid and Mai Tai Shang join forces to kidnap Dejah Thoris once she's released from the temple, and this is all to get back at John Carter for exposing the Thurn religion. So it's a good motivation for the antagonists, and I like that even though they work together, they still have their problems with each other throughout the story, which doesn't make the villain aspect of this story a one-note type of thing. Burroughs takes Carter to a plethora of different locations, and I said this in my Gods of Mars review, but it's true here as well. He really makes Mars feel like an actual planet with different nations and different weather, and that keeps everything fresh. It's not just a desert Martian landscape the whole time. I talked about some of the influences this series had on Star Wars in my previous reviews, and that continues here as well. Some of the names for the creatures were either directly lifted from this or slightly changed. The Banths are an obvious inspiration for the Banthas, and there's even a creature in this story that's literally called a Sith. So once again, there are a lot of names here that George Lucas just basically took, which is really fascinating when you go back and read these old stories. Of all the locations in this novel, I enjoyed Okar the most because it was so different from anything else in this saga so far. It's basically the North Pole of Barsoom. I also like the description of Marantina, which is a glass-domed city. There are so many characters with bizarre names, and it moves at such a fast pace that it's hard to get a grasp of everything going on sometimes, but it's also kind of a good thing at the same time because the creativity is pouring out of Burroughs. So I don't know if it's even a criticism to say that he has too much imagination in these books. I guess it can get a little confusing, especially if you're someone like me reading this stuff for the first time. I'll be the first one to tell you I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I bet it gets more interesting and makes more sense the more you revisit these books. There are a lot of new characters in this. Aside from Thurid and Mai Tai Shang, we also have Kulan Tith, Thu Van Din, Talu, Silensis Ol, and these characters take up most of the story where others like Thuvia, Fedor, Carthoris, and Tars Tarkas take a back seat even though their roles become more pivotal towards the end of this story. Even though she's not in it all that much, I thought Fedor's redemption was well done, and Burroughs ended up making her a pretty tragic character that sacrifices herself for John Carter, so that was well done. The writing of the battles are great. Once again, I feel like Burroughs really excelled at this stuff in particular, and I like that John Carter is a guy who enjoys a good fight. He mentions this once or twice in this book, and I like that there's a lot of fun in this story. It's not just dour all the time because Dejah Thoris is kidnapped. I really felt like this was the end of a trilogy, and judging by the names of the other novels that come after this, it seems like Burroughs focuses on different characters instead of John Carter. So maybe this is the end of his story, which I'd be okay with because it ends with him being declared Jednak of Jedaks, which means Warlord of Mars, hence the title. So he finally gets Dejah Thoris back, and hopefully that's the last time she ever gets kidnapped in these stories, so they can live a happy life together and leave the adventures to Thuvia and his son Carthoris. Any more would be overkill, but we'll see. The Pit of Plenty was also a really interesting sequence or chapter in this book. It was pretty cruel, the illusion of food being put down in this huge pit, and every time John Carter goes to eat it or get to it, it's not there, it's not real. So he basically he almost loses his mind trying to get out of this place. So I thought that was a really cool trap to put him in, and you're interested in seeing how he's going to get out of it. I really enjoyed this book overall. I felt like it was more streamlined than Gods of Mars, which had so much going on to the point where it was overwhelming at times. So far, my favorite book is Princess of Mars, and then Warlord of Mars, and then Gods of Mars. Let me know in the comments how you'd rank these 3 books in the series, and please be sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. Thanks for watching. Hey everyone, it's Ron here with a quick announcement. When I started this channel, I was reading and reviewing the Dune books and other sci-fi related material, and most of you might not know that I'm also a musician. So when I was reading these sci-fi books, I started to get inspired and decided to make my own soundtrack to use for my videos, and now I'm excited to tell you all about the first volume in the Ron Reviews original soundtrack collection. This album includes the first 17 tracks featured on my channel, and it's available now exclusively on Bandcamp. Be sure to check the description of this video for the link to the album. Thanks so much for the support so far. I know I'm just starting out, but I hope you're having as much fun as I am. So check out the original soundtrack Volume 1 on Bandcamp. This music is great if you want something moody and atmospheric to listen to while you're reading some science fiction. I think you're going to love it. Thanks.